Welcome back, everyone, to Joshua's Magic, channel about how the spiritual world connects with the quote-unquote ordinary or mundane world. I'm honored to have a very special guest today, JJ Dewey. He's been a prolific spiritual author, writing numerous books such as the Immortal series, Gods of the Bible, Reincarnation in the Bible, and numerous spiritual articles, possibly more than anybody I can think of anyway. He has a new initiative, or a relatively new initiative, focusing on goodwill called the Declaration of Goodwill. And I'm going to have a conversation with him today about that topic. Welcome, JJ.
Oh, good to be here.
All right. So, the Declaration of Goodwill, why don't you tell us a bit about that for people who might not be aware of it yet?
Well, it's a declaration to remind people of something they already know. Almost everybody believes that we should have generate good feelings toward our neighbor, and almost everybody agrees with the statement of Jesus to love your neighbors yourself, type of thing. But in practice, it's not really coming out. And especially in this day of great political division. Now, when I was young, the division was more religious than political. If somebody was voted different than you did, it was no big deal. They just voted different than you did, and it didn't interfere with your relationship. Now, if you vote the wrong party, then for the wrong guy, you are sometimes an outcast with your family and friends because they're highly offended that you may hold beliefs that are different from you. So we live in an age where we need to be reminded of goodwill, and the basic principle behind that is just to live and let live. And if we just live and let live in this world, we would have peace on earth tomorrow and usher in a new age of peace and prosperity for everybody. But we have people that refuse to just live and let live, that they have to control other people's speech, other people's conduct, and uh, uh, and if they don't comply to what they think, then they will not only disagree with them, but actually hate them and try to stop them, try to interfere with their lives, try to control them. And this is not goodwill. So we need to be reminded of something that almost everybody claims to believe. Now, these people that are ostracizing their friends for believing different than they do, if you ask them about their belief system, they'll claim to be into love and brotherhood, and that the other side, the ones they disagree with, they're into hate. But if you the greatest indication of hate is where you refuse to have any interplay with your brothers and sisters because they just believe different than you do. That's where really true hate is displayed. Yet these people that do this claim to do it in the name of brotherly love. So what they need to be reminded of is the principle of goodwill, which is basically wishing others the best and just living and let live. Let the chips fall where they may. If we have freedom and goodwill for all, that which is right will eventually prevail. And this is where we need to have faith in the idea that if we just live and let live, and let freedom of expression rule, then that which is truest will come to the surface. A little bit like cream comes to the surface and milk.
Cream
Uh,
rises to the top, yeah.
that which is good eventually comes to the surface if it's allowed to. Now, if we just take a milk bottle and shake it every 5 minutes, the cream's never going to come. And if we take humanity and shake them with a lot of disturbing energies, and the good doesn't come to the surface. We need to still things, live, just live and let live, not interfere with other people's lives, not ostracize them, but wish them well and include our brothers and sisters as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, I think everybody would like a world with more goodwill in it. But as you were saying, a lot of people sort of get hung up on things that get in the way of that. And as you'd said in other places, most people think that they're doing the right thing, no matter what it is, at least in the moment.
Yeah, the people with the most ill will claim to have ill will in the name of love. In
So
other
what
words, I'm a loving person, this other guy isn't, therefore we have to do something to this guy.
so that might be a good place to point out some of the obstacles. Like, so in your estimation, what are some common situations or dynamics where somebody thinks they're acting correctly or with goodwill, but they're actually not?
Well, for instance, let's take attitudes toward helping the poor. We have one side that wants to help the poor by just giving them a bunch of free stuff. And then the other side wants to help the poor by helping them to develop their talents and abilities so that they can take care of themselves. Okay, so we have two solutions. So one side may say, well, the other side doesn't care about the poor. They hate the poor. Well, neither side does. Both of them are concerned about the poor, but they have two different approaches. But we need to reach a balance between the approaches. Sometimes people are in such bad shape that they do need some free stuff. But that's not the total solution. Too much of that enables them, and then they start depending on you, and then they never escape their situation. On the other hand, we need a certain amount of educating the poor and helping them develop their talents so they can take care of themselves. That always has to be part of the solution. And but we do need a certain amount of backup. So we need a little bit of both, but those that focus just on one part of the solution, excluding the other, like there's a lot of people that think, well, let's just give them a bunch of free stuff, and it's just wrong to expect them to take care of themselves. Okay, there's people with that attitude, and they think they are the loving ones, and they think that anyone with any other solution just doesn't give a darn about the poor, and maybe even accuses them of hating the poor. And this produces a lot of ill will, where one side accuses the other side of something that is incorrect. Both sides are concerned about the poor. I'd say I don't know anyone out there. I've never met anyone that says just let the poor rot. I haven't seen anybody with
There
that.
might be a few people, but
Yeah,
not.
there's a handful. Maybe 5% of the people are just really think the poor are poor because they're just lazy. Now, some people are poor because they are lazy, which is true, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And so both sides are concerned about the poor, as about 90 to 95% of the people are. And so we need to recognize it, and just establishing the truth about what both sides really are motivated toward will help establish goodwill. So this is just one subject of many, but on this subject, uh, if they can recognize that in each other, then they can think, well, he really has the same goal I have. He just has a little bit different approach, and some of his approach is actually needed. And so if
Well,
you
I
have,
think it's something you were touching on that resonates is, you know, a key component of this is a willingness to give people the benefit of the doubt, you know, to not ascribe that they're the people that want the poor to suffer, but maybe they view it a different way than you. And that most people generally want what we could agree on as a good outcome, even if we might disagree in methods.
yeah,
And the other thing I would say that comes up from what you're saying is just the capacity to be open-minded, you know, instead of fixed and you know how it is and you know how people are seeing. You know, there's got to be a degree of openness and willingness to hear what other people are saying or how they're seeing things.
yeah. And part of the problem is that they have found that negative ads actually work pretty good in the political system. And now I remember I was a kid when JFK ran against Nixon. And one thing that impressed me about Kennedy when he was campaigning was he did not attack the Eisenhower administration and try to make it look like it was wicked or terrible or anything like that. He actually acknowledged, he says, you know, they did a really pretty good job and they did ABC and they're to be complimented on this. He says, but I think we can do better. And I really like that approach. And I haven't heard a politician use that approach since Kennedy.
Hmm.
But now they say, I think such and such administration, they're completely reckless and uncaring and hateful, and they need to be defeated and never surface again. I mean, that's their attitude now. And it seems to work. The more negative the attacks are, if they're demonized enough, then the voters think, boy, I can't vote for this guy. He's just like the devil incarnate. So I got to vote for the other guy, even though he's just a weak candidate. He's, you know, a milk toast guy is a lot better than the devil.
Hmm.
So, so this demonizing each other, and it permeates into society to the point that the common people uh, begin to think associate the other side with the devil himself, you know, and so the goodwill that manifested back in the days of Kennedy and Nixon is just pretty much thrown out the window, and now each side is demonized, and it permeates into the rank and file people.
Well, I think it also occurs to me, as with a lot of other things, maybe goodwill has kind of gone away with all the shifting that's happened in the culture and society, particularly in the West in the last number of decades. You know, so much has sort of changed and fallen away and gotten replaced by new stuff. I mean, you could just take Christianity, for example. For all the problems Christianity has, there was this sense of loving your neighbor as yourself. And with the falling away of religion in a lot of the West, a lot of the good in religion's fallen away with the bad that's fallen away.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I feel that something really needs to be done, and but even though both sides are really hating each other, um, they both sides claim to believe in loving your neighbor. You know, so what they need to be needs to be done is to be reminded, and if they're reminded in the right way, should be able to prick their conscience a little bit, so they will think, you know, that's right, I do. We do. If we have goodwill toward each other, the world would be a better place. And just demonizing each other produces uh, a lot of negativity. When Obama was elected, a lot of people thought, boy, that race is really going to improve. And it did have a tremendous chance to improve at that time, but we didn't take advantage of it. Instead, anyone that had any little bit of a disagreement the media kind of uh, caused them to put focus on the differences rather than the similarities, on the bad rather than the good. This is the trouble with the media, is that if you have trains working perfectly, nobody pays any attention. But if you have a train wreck, then media just gloms onto that, and this. And so when Obama was elected, instead of looking at the good trains moving along, which it seemed like we were moving into a society that could look beyond race, the media focused on sometimes very small differences they try to make into big differences.
Hmm.
And so the media is uh, a lot bigger problem than it used to. It used to be a lot more balanced than it is now. Now they're
Well, I think that gets back to the power people have to create reality. Like if the media is downstream of what people want, what they buy into. And if people don't like what they're seeing from the media, whether if it's dishonest information or just a focus on the negative, it's to some degree incumbent on people to shift their focus to a more truthful or positive perspective. And if enough people do that, the 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 people focusing on the negative or the untrue will eventually fall away. And we're seeing some of that happen with the cable news organizations losing membership over time and things like that.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of people, especially with Tucker's going to make a big difference in shifting people from television to the internet,
Yeah.
their news. And
Well,
so,
he had a large audience of, I mean, he had a fairly diverse audience from what I understand, but he did have a large share of older people who were more attached to TVs and cable than they are to the internet.
yeah,
So,
and he had more Democrats watching him than CNN did.
hmm,
So, but yeah, he's apparently going to go to Twitter, and he could make Twitter could take away a lot of people from cable news, uh, thanks to him showing up there, and then other people may follow.
yeah.
So that'll make some changes.
Well, he's a big guy and he has a lot of power and um yeah, he's able to kind of make that change with a certain decision or reaction to somebody else's decision. But I think a lot of people think, or maybe they just feel that they can't really do too much. And it's all these sort of like big people with large followings and power that are going to make things happen. And there's definitely some truth in that. But I don't think people realize the amount of power they do have to change the world. Can you talk on that in connection with Goodwill?
Oh yeah, like if all if like on a YouTube video that promotes goodwill or something positive, if all they do is watch it, it will have little effect. But they can make a comment, for instance, and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, uh,
I like what you're saying, JJ.
and make a comment. If they make a comment, that can be pretty potent. When I read a news article on the internet or watch a YouTube video, I always go to the comments, because sometimes you get more from the comments than the article or the video. Uh, there's some very intelligent people out there that are just kind of living average lives, and some of their comments are a lot better than what happens in the news article or the video. And so, yeah, they can. That makes a difference if they participate. The Well, we're living in an age where the average person can participate a lot more than he could have a generation ago.
Well, let me take this opportunity. Anybody who's watching, if you're enjoying this, please leave a like on the video. If you'd like to put the message out there, share it with some people you know, and leave us a comment telling us what you think. It'll all help the algorithm show it to more people. And consider subscribing if you'd like to see more of this.
Yeah.
It occurs to me on this topic of people being able to make a difference, even if they're not really influential or powerful. Some instances or experiments where just the power of people's thought or attention change things. Like I remember reading studies about how in areas where people were doing specific amount of praying that the crime rate got lowered. And I even heard some I don't know if this is true, but in what's currently Iraq, when and maybe it was Iraq back then too, but Hitler was thinking about invading, and all the clerics there got together and prayed or meditated or something, and then the next day Hitler decided, well, we're not going to go into Iraq.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
yeah.
There's a lot of experiments done with what they call the power of intention. And there's a book called The Power of Eight, where the author says that if you get 8 people together, and 8 seems to be the magical number, and just focus on healings. If somebody needs healing, you put their picture up on the screen or whatever, and you have a Zoom meeting with 8 or more people, and she says to focus for 10 minutes in silence and send them positive energy toward their healing. And she says that she's experienced basically a lot of miracles through this happening. And the book is called The Power of Eight. It's pretty interesting. And I've done that a couple times myself in meetings I've had, and had really good results. Sometimes we didn't go the full 10 minutes, sometimes just 3 or 4. But even that has produced some very positive results. So if it just takes 8 people or more to do this, and yeah, get together with, find 8 people and send out positive vibes to what you want, and it can have a tremendous effect.
And if you can't get 8 people, maybe just start with yourself and then maybe 2 or 3 other people. Don't stop just because you can't get 8.
Yeah, yeah. Just, well, the scripture says, where 2 or 3 gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And so if Christ is in the midst of just 2 or 3, then anything becomes possible if they are agreed. And just 2 people working in agreement is really difficult to find. It's difficult to find 2 people that are married that are just really in harmony about almost everything.
Hmm.
A lot of them argue a lot. But so just finding one other person that you can really feel in harmony with and promote something is difficult. But if you find 8 and or an agreement on that one thing, then you've got a point of power.
Well, and if you can work out a positive relationship on that low level, I think it gives you more power to sort of meditate on goodwill into the world if that's what you're inclined to. You know, like by expanding your conception of goodwill or reality of it in your consciousness, you can meditate on it more clearly and be more potent in what you're able to affect in yourself and in the world.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I guess some of the things that were touched on earlier are like, being able to listen to the other person and not just assuming. Like if there's that mutual dialogue and mutual listening, I think that's a good step for being able to have that kind of agreement that's usually difficult between people.
yeah. What inspired this? The Declaration of Goodwill was one of my favorite writers uh, that was given through Alice A. Bailey. And the what the person that we call the Tibetan or Dwell Kul said that basically that goodwill is extremely important to manifest among the world, that it has the power to actually stop wars and bring in a new age of peace and prosperity. And so he recommended that a manifesto or declaration of goodwill be created and then promoted by all the spiritual groups of the world. And if the spiritual groups of the world were able to unite, then he says that it would be possible then to actually change the world.
Yeah, he
So
said if the only point they had to unite on was goodwill, because they can disagree about all sorts of other stuff. But he said on this key point of goodwill, that's where they can unite.
yeah, yeah. And when I read that, I thought, well, this was written back in the 1940s and nobody's done it yet. So it's pretty beyond much behind schedule here, and it needs to be done. It needs to be done now more than any time in history. And so we've written up such a manifesto, or we call it a Declaration of Goodwill. And I recommend you maybe post it.
Yeah, I can put it in the description of the video.
Yeah. And so if we can circulate this and get enough people behind it, then it can actually change the thinking. And what effect needs to happen is merely that people need to be reminded of that which they already claim to believe. They claim to be loving people that respect your neighbor and live and let live. So that they need to be reminded of this, because if they're not doing it, and then they're reminded, and all of a sudden maybe their neighbor's talking about it, the declaration, and they think, well, once an idea begins to permeate society, then it gathers in tremendous power. And that can be a bad idea or a good idea. Right now, we have the bad idea that there's two sides that just can never reach agreement, and they have to fight until one completely dominates the other. And that's never going to happen. So what will happen is they'll just continue fighting and disagreeing, unless something like the Declaration of Goodwill is accepted, and then people will move more toward the idea of just living and let live. Let the other guy have his say. If we get all of our ideas out there in circulation, the best idea will survive. Just like you have all kinds of different cars out there, and the cars that aren't very good ideas, nobody will buy. The ones that really provide good service, good mileage, are efficient, last long, the word eventually gets out, and these cars are the ones that people buy. And this is the way it is with the free flow of ideas. On the other hand, if some automaker had a monopoly and was able to destroy the other automakers, then pretty soon he would do nothing to improve his cars, because we're forced to buy them.
Well, I
And
guess, yeah, finish what you're
so,
saying.
yeah, we'd be forced to buy them, and then everything would deteriorate. So we have to have that free flow of ideas. So as we said earlier, the cream rises to the top. The truth rises to the top. That which works, and that which does work is goodwill, good feeling expressed toward those that may disagree with us.
So to play devil's advocate a little bit, because I think a lot of people see goodwill as sort of just a nebulous idea that doesn't doesn't really apply to a lot of the real issues that are facing the world. I mean, it certainly applies to the polarization issue somewhat, but people might take other issues, or even the example you just came up there. If you had a car maker who had a monopoly, right? Um, goodwill might not be the way to resolve that issue, or it might not be the most important factor in resolving that issue. So I guess my question to you is what are some scenarios that goodwill, even if it's a part of it, it's maybe not the most important part of it in resolving or fixing a situation?
Well, goodwill should be always an item, even if you're robbed at gunpoint by somebody.
Mhm.
You the immediate thing you have to do is whatever it takes to either defend yourself or survive. Okay, so you're not thinking of goodwill, but uh, when all is said and done, after it's over, you still have to look at the person's soul that did this.
Mhm.
And I call it using the lion principle. A lion uh, will eat you if it's hungry, and it can be very dangerous. You wouldn't want to be thrown in the same cage with it. But when you go to the zoo with your kids, they look at the lion and they smile and they think that lion is just really a great animal, even though it would eat them if it could. So what you do with something as dangerous is you just look at its nature and say, well, the lion is just a lion. That's the way he is. And you can still appreciate things about him. So a negative person is just what he is. And what you have to do is contain him so he or stay out of his way so he can't eat you or he can't cause you harm, but you can still have goodwill toward him. Like when you go to the zoo and see the lion, you have goodwill toward that lion. You want the lion to be fed and taken care of and be happy, but you stay out of its way. And this is so we have to have this attitude of goodwill always, and that was really demonstrated by Jesus on the cross when the people that nailed nails in his hands and feet, he said to them, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And when someone creates a definite harmful act, it's really basically that they just don't know what they're doing. They're acting at a point of insanity and low realization of truth on their part. And so if we look at it from a higher angle, we can have goodwill toward everybody, and that's what we have to do. But use common sense approach. If someone's trying to kill you, then yeah, you defend yourself. But you can still look upon the guy as just being misled.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying it's always important to have goodwill in there someplace, at least as a backdrop. But sometimes the issue is more important than the goodwill part, like with the lion. You know, you're not your kid falls into the lion cage, you're not gonna stand there and be like, well, I gotta make sure I have that goodwill towards the lion in my head before I go grab my kid out of there, you know.
Right, that's the wrong time to have entire focus on goodwill. Yeah, you want to save your kid.
Yeah.
Then
Or with that car monopoly thing, you know, you want to have this underlying respect for that guy as a human being, but you might be campaigning very hard to get the law changed or, you know,
yeah,
increase competition or something like that.
yeah. Once you get the kid, if the kid falls in the lion cage and then you retrieve him, then you can go stand back and enjoy the lion again. and you know, it's kind of entertaining in a way when people really attack you, and then you distance yourself from them so they cannot harm you in any way. and you insulate yourself with your positive thinking. So it doesn't matter what they say, how much they insult you, it means nothing. And then you watch them, and they're like raging lions that are kind of fun to watch because because their reactions are entertaining. And so you can, they actually have entertainment value, these people that attack you and try to diminish you, because
Well,
they
a really good,
have no effect on you.
yeah. Well, a really good example of that was the Jordan Peterson, Kathy Newburn interview, where yeah, where she just kept like twisting his words and trying to attribute to him things that he didn't really mean or didn't actually say. And you see him talking about it later, and he's just like, well, it was easy to not be offended because she was talking about a totally different person. She wasn't talking about me. I don't actually believe those things.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that interview. It was really good. And oftentimes, when people have attacked me, when I put out different teachings I have, and they really strongly disagree, and I say, no, the problem that you have here is you're arguing with what I did not say, not with what I did say. And this is often the case with people that strongly disagree with me. They just misunderstand what I'm saying. And so they argue with what I did not even say and with what I do not even believe. And when I say that to them, it just tends to irritate them even more. And they'll become, give me a little bit of entertainment value at that point. But,
So
but
what are some situations where, we covered the lion and the robber and maybe, the car monopoly sort of thing, where goodwill should be present, but it's not the most important thing to focus on in the moment. What are some situations where maybe the details of the situations are less important and it's more important or effective to focus on goodwill as the highest value in that situation?
well, like in World War II, when Hitler, when we were at war with Hitler in a life and death situation nationally, uh, we it wasn't productive just to send goodwill to Hitler. You know, we needed to, he needed to be defeated. But on the other hand, we needed to acknowledge that the people that were caught under his domination, uh, many of them were really good people. And now, so a lot of people today say, boy, if you say a Nazi is a good person, that you must be a Nazi yourself. No, that's that's the wrong type of thinking here. There's people caught up in all kinds of negative thought forms, negative programs, negative plans, negative governments that under the right circumstances would just live a good and decent life. And there were a lot of people in Nazi Germany that if they were lived in the United States, they would have fought for the United States against the Nazis. It's just that average people can be captured mentally very easy. Average people that are under normal circumstances would be very decent. And probably, I'd guess, probably about 80% of the Nazis if they were under a good belief system, they would have been really decent people, good neighbors, and people of goodwill. But they
You
were
mean
caught,
basically the German citizenry at large at that time?
yeah, at that time, or even people that were members of the Nazi Party. They under the right circumstances, they would have been, a good neighbor that maybe you'd have fun having a barbecue with. But yeah, we need to see everybody as people like ourselves, just doing the best under the circumstances they're under. But a lot of the rank and file are easily manipulated, and they don't understand that they're being manipulated. they think that they're choosing of their own free will when they're kind of under a hypnotic trance. And this is part of the problem with the division we have, is that people are under kind of a hypnotic trance to accept the groupthink that's out there. And there's a handful of people that can see beyond that, that just totally think for themselves. But those people that think for themselves are a small, totally, or a small minority. But and we need to permeate this groupthink with truth and reminder of goodwill, because once truth is seen, then it cannot be unseen. And this is the power of truth. And this is why all the negative forces of the world do everything they can to suppress any truth that threatens the current system. If it begins to surface, it will be attacked and suppressed. If they can suppress it, then they can delay its realization. But once truth is clearly seen, it cannot be unseen. And once people see that the power of goodwill, they will not be able to unsee it.
Well,
And
getting back to the power of goodwill in maybe ordinary situations, what is a situation where that's the thing to lead with, and the details of the situation don't matter as much, in contrast to World War II and the other examples?
well, just about everything. Um, Always use goodwill as a starting point in everything. If you're a salesman trying to sell somebody, you want to establish really good feeling between you and your customer. If you're trying to promote a political candidate, you want to portray the political candidate as a good guy that's on your side. And so goodwill is should be the starting point in any interplay that we have as individuals or society or groups. And if we have that as the starting point, then we can make some progress.
I think you mentioned the other day something about when you were doing sales, you either called up some guy. You know the story I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You want to tell that?
Yeah, I was selling advertising, and I called up this guy, and he was uh, he was really in a bad mood, and he started chewing me out. I think I sent him a fax or something, and he said I interfered with his fax machine or something, and he was just mad, and he just raked me over the coals. And I was as pleasant as I could be to him, and I was trying to understand him. And finally, he hung up, and then about 5 minutes later, my phone rang. He had apparently had my number on caller ID or something. And he was very apologetic. He says, I just really raked you over the coals. And then when I hung up, I realized, you were just really pleasant and nice and didn't respond negatively, and made me feel ashamed of myself. So how much is that ad you're trying to sell me? And he went and bought an ad from me. So that's just an example of if you maintain a positive stance and show goodwill, even though other people are not, it can have a powerful effect.
You have any other interesting stories or anecdotes from your life about goodwill making the difference?
Oh, maybe a good one is with my wife. Whenever we have a conflict, we have a procedure that we follow. And if the conflict reaches a point that it needs to be resolved. We agree to look at each other in our eyes and say, I love you to each other 3 times. And the first time is quite difficult because if you're having a friction with your spouse, you really don't feel like saying that. And so if one of us doesn't say it with enough meaning, we make them repeat it. Now say it again and like you really mean it. Okay. And so we have to say, I love you 3 times to each other as if we really mean it, even though maybe at the time we don't feel like it.
Mm.
By the time we say, I love you the 3rd time, it's, we can't even remember what we're arguing about. It's just like the good feeling is restored and the bad feelings just no longer exist. It's quite magical. Uh, and that illustrates the power of goodwill. And we haven't had to do that for quite some time. In the beginning of our marriage, we did it once in a while, but we haven't had to do it for quite some time. We're kind of after being married a long period of time, you adjust to each other and a lot. But in the beginning of our marriage, that was a really crucial thing for us to do, and it really helped establish positivity. And so, and this is like the power of goodwill. When goodwill is expressed, you may not feel like expressing the goodwill, just like we didn't feel like saying I love you when we were irritated at each other. But once you say it, then it has tremendous power, especially if you say it like you really mean it, even if you're pretending to mean it at first. And pretty soon you start feeling it. Then when you start feeling it, then it has power. And same thing with goodwill. You show goodwill to people that are showing you ill will. Uh, it reminds them of their true nature, which is based on love rather than hate and discord.
When you do that with your wife, is it the procedure that one person says it 3 times and then the other person says it 3 times, or do you one person says it once, the other person says it once, one
Yeah,
person?
you switch back and forth.
Mhm.
Okay. The person with the most negative feelings needs to say it first, and then you say it back to them, and you go back and forth 3 times. And by the 3rd time, we couldn't even remember what we were arguing about. It was kind of funny. It just
What inspired you to do that, or where did you come up with that idea from?
it just came to me one day. I don't know where it came from, but it's a great idea, I think.
Well, that's where some of the best ideas come from. They just come to you.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's pretty good.
So I think in concluding here, we might just say that.
Well, I had a few more advanced
Oh, did you?
questions to
Oh,
ask you,
okay.
but yeah, if you want to include for so yeah, I'd like to ask you a little more in-depth or metaphysical questions now. But if you wanted to sort of wrap up for the general audience.
Okay, if it doesn't take too long, go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, I thought you might have some words there. But so in the Alice Bailey books, there's this concept of the will to good, as the Tibetan puts it. And he says that the will to good is like a higher level energy, and that most people don't respond to it or sense it, but only sort of the disciples or the more advanced people on the planet can pick up on the will to good, and that the will to good is by disciples is sort of transformed into goodwill or stepped down. Can you talk about the will to good and how that differs from goodwill and that interplay there?
It's not so much it differs, it's more of a wholeness versus partial.
Hmm.
because goodwill is a partial expression of what the Tibetan calls the will to good. The will to good is where the person that's has above average spiritual contact will pick up uh, what might be termed the will of God or a higher will, and he picks us up and can uh, create circumstances, plans, ideas to manifest that. Whereas the average person doesn't pick that up, but he gets a reflection of this higher will. And this higher will is pretty much an omnipotent energy that nothing can stop it if from eventually manifesting. The only thing, the only way we make a difference is the time factor. There's certain things that will manifest on the earth, and one thing that will that is goodwill itself. This, and that was the song the angels sang at the birth of Christ, peace on earth, goodwill to men. That is something that is connected to this higher aspect of will that nothing can stop. It will happen, but the only thing at play is the time factor. We can speed up the time of this happening.
So what are some,
Down.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but for the average person, he just picks up, good feelings toward your neighbor, live and let live, and that's so. But if the average person is at least picks that up, then it can speed up the manifestation of higher will here upon planet Earth.
So
Yeah.
what, speaking now specifically to more advanced people or disciples who can pick up on this will to good or will of God or higher will, what are some things they can do to step that down to help bring down God's will or God's plan or whatever? What are some methods, techniques, or things they can?
What DK emphasizes is cooperation. He points out the difficulty of the various spiritual groups in cooperating. They're all after their own little piece of the spiritual pie, and they're very guarded with their memberships, and they're not into sharing ideas and plans and so on. He says they need to have more cooperation. He even recommended people at that time sharing their mailing list, making their members available to other groups, so that the ideas can have greater circulation. And he says the groups need to get together with this goodwill and proclaim it together as one. And it's very difficult. We've been promoting the idea of goodwill for a while, and uh, the spiritual groups out there, basically, most of them have pretty much ignored the idea. And but we need to be able to permeate the various spiritual groups, not only the esoteric and new age groups, but even standard religious sects. They all support goodwill. And this is something any religion or spiritual group can get behind if they will practice what they preach. And that's a lot of them, give some acceptance to the idea of goodwill, but cooperating with other groups, that's the difficult part.
It occurs to me when you're cooperating with other groups or working together, you're sort of symbolically acting out the inner reality that on a deeper, higher level, all are one. And you're sort of living that through a degree of cooperation. And so it's sort of putting it into practice and making the symbolic literal or the esoteric exoteric.
Yeah. And then he tells us that the most important thing is to get behind the idea of goodwill, but not let the group feel threatened in any way, because each group has their own mission, their own ideas. That's fine, he says, but they need to cooperate on this one thing. If they can cooperate on this one thing, promoting a plan of goodwill to humanity, he maintains it can change the world. And and I firmly believe that, because when you think of it, if just the average person out there in the world, an average leader, just promoted goodwill and live and let live, all the wars and conflicts of the world would just cease. And the solution is so simple, but the resistance is so high. It's an amazing thing to think about. But the solution can come. It's possible to actually make a breakthrough. We just need people to unite in good thought rather than negative thinking.
Yeah, like you said before, if you can remind people, they already sort of believe in it. Just need to be
Yeah.
reminded.
Yeah, just practice what we already believe in is what we have to do to make the world a better place.
So I think that's a good point to wind down on. Thanks for coming by. I always ask this question at the end of interviews, but using your intuition or your intuitive faculty, what message do you have for the audience today?
Well, I want to emphasize goodwill because that's the main subject here, and that's to look within yourself and look at your friends, your neighbor. Find the person in your life that is that irritates you more than anyone else, and look for the Christ in him. Look for the perfection, the good that is in that person. And the Course in Miracles makes an interesting statement about this person. It says that this person is your savior, because if you can overlook the problems in this most irritating person in your life, then there's nothing that can take you away from the true spirit of God. So yeah, I always like that idea, and it's a difficult thing for people to do, but if you can do it, and Jesus demonstrated this, like I said, on the cross, where he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." They were the most irritating people in his life, and yet he was able to see beyond their flaws
Good
and
note to end it on.
not let them affect him.
So where can they find you if people are interested in your work, and how can they find out more about the Declaration?
Um, well, we have a Facebook group called Declaration of Goodwill, and we recommend you go there you and sign up with the group. Now, by signing up with the group, it's a little like signing a petition. And so instead of creating a petition, we created this group, and when you become a member, you're just acknowledging that, yeah, I support the Declaration of Goodwill, and that you're not under any obligation to participate or at all. You can if you want, and you can make posts there if you want, but just by signing up as a member, you're making the statement, yes, I support the Declaration of Goodwill. And so go to Facebook, type in the search Declaration of Goodwill, and it should take you there.
You want to plug your personal website or other groups?
And my website is freeread.com, freeread.com. And then my Facebook group, where you can find a lot of my teachings, is called The Keys of Knowledge.
All right, and we'll have links to all that good stuff in the description there. All right, well, thanks very much, JJ. It's been a good conversation. May the force be with you.
Yeah, good questions, and same to you.
Thanks. And if you like this,
live long and prosper.
all right, sounds good.
Yeah.
And if you like this video, leave a like. If you'd like more, consider subscribing, and yeah, comment and share to help get these ideas about goodwill out there. And be interested to see your thoughts on this. Bye, everyone.
Okay, see you later. We, the people of goodwill from all nations, who desire to see the people of this planet progress in a state of peace, safety, and friendship,
find it necessary to act and issue this Declaration of Goodwill.
Polarizing rhetoric, accompanied with vitriol and name-calling from leaders, celebrities, and media,
spawns tension among the masses and undermines goodwill and cooperation.
Therefore, we, the silent majority, and people of goodwill on this planet, have decided to take action and issue a call to correction.
Such a correction is essential, for our leaders have power to take us into wars and conflict that could destroy our civilization.
We do not expect our leaders to agree with us or each other on all matters, for that is beyond the present ability of most individuals.
But there is one thing all can do that will pave the way to quieting the present conflicts and opening the door to peace on earth.
We can all be civil to each other and send goodwill, rather than the prevailing ill will that we currently witness.
Loving our neighbor as ourselves is at the core of the teachings of every great messenger from the past.
And we need to be reminded of this now, perhaps more than any time in our history.
The great majority of us who are not in power do not hate those who vote or think differently than ourselves, nor do we care about their race, sex, or status.
We are willing to extend a hand of friendship and goodwill to all who will accept it.
We do not call others hateful names or desire to hurt them,
but seek harmlessness in all discourse and interaction and expect our leaders to do the same.
Many leaders and media personalities seem to think personal attacks are justified, as it highlights how bad the other guy is in order to effect change.
But negative tactics often result in negative rather than positive change.
Calling our neighbors haters when they see themselves as loving people results in resentment and often fuels the emotions of the projected name-calling.
The attack thus brings forth the hate that was not previously there.
So much grief in the world can be avoided if our leaders would embrace the spirit of goodwill, as it is longed for in so many of us who silently watch these reckless attacks.
Many leaders and media personalities understand this principle and use it to polarize and create false animosity where none should exist.
Therefore, we, the people of goodwill, call on leaders and media who fail to embrace a higher path,
to match the positive spirit of goodwill that exists in most humanity, the common people.
The day of watching leaders bring us to the brink of destruction is over.
All those in position of power and influence must be held accountable for their intentionally caustic speech, which incites anger and divides us.
Sending peace and goodwill is our charge as we seek to transform our societies throughout the world.
It is true we have problems to solve which require rigorous debate and uncomfortable discussions, but we cannot solve them by demonizing each other.
If we look for the best in one another and give our neighbors the benefit of the doubt, we have a much better chance of solving problems and reaching agreement.
Indeed, we need to start with ourselves
If each of us does our part to extend goodwill and friendship to all and encourage others to do the same,
the world will be healed,
and we can safely enter into a new era
of peace and goodwill.